Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. State Senator Mallory McMorrow here with another edition of our virtual coffee hours. Welcome to everybody who's joining and logging in. We are live streaming this on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So welcome to everybody who is joining from any of the platforms. Quick reminder of how this works. We're going to give you an update on what's happening in the state, an update from the legislature, celebrate some good news from our district, which is my favorite segment, and then open it up for live Q&A. So as you have questions, feel free to type it into the comment section of whatever platform you're joining us from, and then Liz from my office will jump in at the end and facilitate those questions. Now, because these videos are recorded and they're streaming across multiple platforms, what would be helpful is when you type your question, if you could put your name, if that's not already obvious by your username, what city you're from, and then go ahead and type your question. Liz will read those out loud. That way, no matter where you're joining, you've got the context. And if you want to watch this video again after the fact, it will be up for everybody posted. So with that, we will jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as we jump through what's going on this week. All right. First up, some news as we continue to move on. Fingers crossed, optimistically, what is starting to feel like finally getting on the other side of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen vaccination rates increasing throughout the state and throughout the country. I just saw a news report that 50% of the population throughout the entire United States is now fully vaccinated, the adult population. That is tremendous progress. And we are already seeing how effective those vaccines are in controlling the spread of COVID-19 throughout our community. So with that news, the return to office work was official this past week. So we hit the vaccination guideline threshold that allowed in-person office work to resume. So there are no longer restrictions on in-person office work, and MIOSHA updated their guidelines as well. So in the workplace setting, if you work in an office, employers may now allow fully vaccinated employees to work without wearing a face mask. And once again, we've had a lot of questions about this, like, well, how do you know? So there isn't any documentation required. It really is the honor system, but it's a really kind of a change in how we think about who's protected in this case. I know for the past year and a half, we've all been kind of operating under this mindset of I wear a mask to protect you, you wear a mask to protect me. But now what the CDC has learned is that the vaccinations are really so effective at protecting you as the person who is vaccinated that a vaccinated person should feel safe in a public setting, in a setting around others, even if those in the room are potentially not vaccinated. So really, it is incumbent on the person who is not vaccinated to wear a mask for their own protection. So that's some updated guidance there. But I think one of the things that's really important, this is going to be a transition for a lot of people. It took us a long time to all get comfortable with the idea of wearing masks around others. So, keep one in your back pocket, keep one with you. I know there are a few shops that I've been to over the past week that are still keeping a mask requirement in their space, which is their right to do so. So be respectful of the space that you're entering and look out for other people. All right. In addition to that, cleaning requirements have been updated to reflect the changes in CDC recommendations, but still employers should have a written plan. This is something that was put in place during the pandemic for what to do if there is a COVID outbreak at the workplace. So make sure that that is maintained. And I think that's just a good policy moving forward for anything public health related. All right, moving into our next bit of news, we have heard outreach from a number of you, and this is an incredibly concerning story for us. Huntington Woods native and Berkeley Schools high school graduate Danny Fenster, a journalist and managing editor for Frontier Myanmar, was detained by military government authorities in Myanmar on his way to the airport to return to the United States to visit family and friends here. This week, I joined State Rep Regina Weiss, who is collecting signatures from all of the Oakland County delegation in the state legislature to encourage Secretary of State Blinken to do everything in his power to work to secure Danny's release. So we will continue to work with our federal colleagues, including Senator Peters' office, Congressman Levin's office, who's been leading the charge here, to keep everybody updated. Obviously, it's a very concerning development and a trend that we've seen around the world where journalists are being detained for doing their work. In the United States, especially, this is something that is very core to us, the value of a free press. And journalism is not a crime. So we will continue to stay in communication, and we encourage the United States to work to secure Danny's safe return. All right, jumping into updates from the Capitol. This week in Lansing, a bill was moved through committee, which is a bill that we've seen around the country. We have seen bills to prohibit trans kids from playing sports in school. Just to put this into context, we've had some people reach out about this on both sides. So thank you to family and parents who have reached out wanting their kids to be able to play sports no matter what. I had an incredible conversation with a girls robotics team from Troy this week. And one of the things that I asked them was, what would you want me to go back to the state legislature and tell the rest of the state about you? And without hesitating, one of the girls said that we as girls are not just advocating for girls, we're advocating for everybody. So those who are non-binary, gender non-conforming, to have the same opportunities as everybody else. So just to put this into perspective, the Michigan High School Athletic Association has long maintained a policy for trans kids who want to play sports in school. They can apply, and then it's really up to the process to approve that application. And there are 180,000 student athletes who play sports every single year. And over the past 5 years, the number of trans kids who have applied for that waiver to play sports on the team that best fits their gender identity is 10 total. So that is 2 per year on average out of 180,000 students. It is with the support of their school and their team and their friends and the association in and of itself. So my feeling on this bill is that it is a bill in search of a problem, and it is punishing and demonizing kids who are already some of our most marginalized students who are going through a hard time. And honestly, these are kids. They're kids. Kids are not the enemy. They just want to play sports with their friends. So my colleague, Dana Polhanke, she serves on the committee that this bill was run through. And I just want to play a quick clip of her questioning of an individual who came to testify here. And I think one of the most damning things about even this hearing was most of the people who were asked to come in and testify on this bill are not from the state of Michigan. So this was clearly, there is a concerted effort around the country to put bills like this forward. And this is what happened in committee.
You seem to have a lot of stats about Michigan. Do you know how many student athletes there are in Michigan?
I do not.
It's 180,000. Do you know over the past 5 years how many transgender kids have applied to play sports in Michigan?
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, the answer is 10.
Okay.
Yeah, did you know that the Michigan High School Athletic Association has a working process to whereby transgender kids can apply to play sports in Michigan? Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And where do you suggest that transgender kids play sports? Thank you for your testimony. Sure. You seem to have a lot of stats about Michigan. Do you?
All right. So, I think that just really hits on the issue that I have with these bills. There are so many issues that are facing the state right now that we need to be focused on. There were billions of dollars in federal relief that are still being held up, that haven't been appropriated, that need to get out to our schools. And I can't wrap my head around treating 2 kids per year as a threat to our kids. To put this into context, I offered up a resolution last week when we were going through budget bills to restore $200,000 to the Office of the Children's Ombudsman. And this is an office that investigates and prosecutes child abuse, neglect, and death. So when we are thinking about our role as state legislators in the state in terms of protecting kids, the fact that we are not appropriately funding that department, but bills like this are moving to prevent kids who just want to play with their friends is unacceptable to me. So the bill at this point, to my knowledge, is not moving forward. There may be another hearing on it, but we will keep everybody posted with more as this comes up. And I thank everybody who has reached out so far regarding these bills. All right, get back to sharing my screen here. Next up, the governor and the legislature have reached not an agreement on the budget, an agreement to continue discussing the budget, which seems like a small step, and it should seem very, very obvious. But given the past year, there's been a lot of battles between the Republican majority in the legislature and the governor. But this is actually a big step forward, where finally the governor's office will be included in the budget negotiations, which just means that the process of moving and passing budget bills should go much more smoothly, that there won't necessarily be as many fights. It's a breakthrough in what has been a really tense, if I'm honest, year and a half. So hopefully this will allow for the release of that federal funding that is coming down to us, something that has been kind of held up as a quote unquote negotiating tool. But, you know, the way that I look at it is these are your federal tax dollars that the federal government said should come back to us for things like schools and COVID relief that the legislature is effectively holding hostage. So I hope that this is a breakthrough and that it will continue the budget process moving along in a much better fashion, but we will keep everybody posted as the budget process moves through the summer and into the fall. Budgets are due based on the state constitution by October 1st. However, we've always been pushing for the past 2 years since I've been in office in trying to get budgets passed earlier, because I know schools start their budget process for the upcoming year on June 1st. So we will keep everybody posted, but this is a step in the right direction and hopefully a breakthrough in some of the gridlock that we have seen over the past year. All right, shifting gears, pun intended. Last week we had President Biden visited Michigan and was here to visit the Ford plant in Dearborn, where Ford also released the F-150 Lightning. And that really jump-started the conversation again around electric vehicles. Anybody who has followed along with our work knows that this has been a policy area that we've been focused on since day one, is how do we ensure that Michigan does what we need to do to not only maintain our place as an industry leader here, but make sure that we don't fall behind. You know, if we don't invest here, if we don't put our foot on the gas, so to say, or the foot on the pedal with the batteries, that we will potentially lose our place, not only to states like California, but to countries like China, who are investing very, very heavily in EV and electrification. So I just want to play a little clip of what the president had to say when he was here in the state.
Look, the future of the auto industry is electric. There's no turning back. Right now, China is leading in this race. Make no bones about it. It's a fact. And they think they're going to win. But I got news for them. They will not win this race. We can't let them. We have to move fast. And that's what you're doing here. I'm not letting a single contract to a single company that does not hire Americans, have all American parts, and has a supply chain that is an American product supply chain.
All right, so exciting stuff. It is always a big deal when the president of the United States is here in our great state, and it was part of a larger theme throughout the week. So there were a number of events that I participated with, including the Michigan Climate and Clean Energy Summit that was held virtually. Hopefully this is kind of one of the last of the virtual events as we are all getting vaccinated and we'll be able to get back to events safely. I joined my colleague, Representative Bellino, a Republican from Monroe, who's been working with our office over the past couple of years on a bipartisan bill package related to expanding Michigan's electric vehicle infrastructure. And then I also participated in a press conference that was held with the Ecology Center, encouraging the federal government to adopt clean car standards to continue this innovation and investment. I think this is a very, very rare opportunity that we have where what is best for our signature industry, what is best for the economy, and what is best for the environment and healthcare costs are all aligned. They are not competing with each other. So it is an opportunity that doesn't come along that often where we won't necessarily have competing interests, but we do have to go. We do have to put these efforts in place. I currently serve on the Governor's Council of Future Mobility and Electrification, where we are working on some policy recommendations that will be delivered in September. So we're working on putting those together as well. And more to come. So we will keep you posted as we continue pushing for this. Finally, I will have a resolution that will be introduced encouraging the federal government to allow EV chargers at rest areas. This was something when we were putting our bill package together last year, seemed like an obvious solution. As you are traveling the state, one of the concerns that we hear from people who are considering an electric vehicle is range anxiety, that I want to make sure that I can go from Detroit to the Upper Peninsula or wherever I want to go around the state and not get stuck. So we see the vehicles that are hitting the market. That's really exciting. But until we have that infrastructure in place, we could anticipate that adoption will be slower. But what we learned in putting our bill package together is that actually based on federal code currently, we cannot put anything commercial at interstate rest areas. So any of the rest areas throughout our state highway system that are on interstate highways, MDOT informed us that the state of Michigan could potentially lose our funding if we were to put electric vehicle chargers at those rest areas because those are revenue generating. So the resolution does something very, very simple. It asks Congress to update federal code to allow the installation of EV chargers at rest areas. So hoping to have that introduced and pushed forward. And it's just a really, really simple hurdle that's in the way that we did not realize was there, that if updated would allow for this industry to move forward and remove a barrier to adoption. So more to come on that. And we will keep everybody moving. All right, moving into my new favorite segment, good news. Good news from the district. We are going to start with all right, the Berkeley Bears, the Berkeley High School women's varsity softball team. Their coaches and parents reached out and asked us if we would recognize them, which we are so thrilled to do, which is a great reminder. If you have good news from the district that you want us to give a shout out and celebrate, please email us. I will put the info up for emailing us, but wanted to celebrate the Berkeley Bears and their incredible year. They didn't get a season last year and worked tirelessly this year to bring home a 23-11 overall record, 9-1 in the league. And became district champions. So congratulations to the Berkeley Bears. And they did this all while maintaining a 3.45 team average GPA. So we can see the team right there. So huge congrats to them on all of your accomplishments, especially in the year that we had. So awesome, awesome news. Up next on good news. I don't know if you can see this, but Mike Conrad is a Royal Oak teacher, and he was awarded Film Educator of the Year nationally. So super, super exciting news. The award comes from the Digital Arts Film and Television DAFT, a nonprofit media arts education organization founded over 50 years ago. So huge congrats to Royal Oak's Mike Conrad on that accomplishment. Really, really proud to have that level of talent right here at home in our district. Next up, Chief Financial Credit Union breaks ground on a new campus in Rochester. And one of the things that I think is really fun about this groundbreaking, you can actually see it in this photo. The new financial campus is in the former U.S. Scuba Diving Center building. So if you look really closely in this photo, you can see that the groundbreaking appears cool. So it's going to be really exciting to see that space revitalized and given new life. Founded in Pontiac in 1941, the credit union has branches in Birmingham, Dearborn, and Rochester Hills, and they are now expanding with the new Rochester campus. Our last bit of good news for the week, City of Royal Oak is welcoming a new four-legged furry officer, Thorvey, whose name means Goddess of Thunder. Pretty badass. Welcome, Thorvey. She will partner with Officer Andrew Nadrowski and is certified in tracking, apprehension, and explosives detection. Patrol dogs, this is something that I learned reading the article, typically work 5 to 7 years until the work becomes too difficult on their joints, at which point they retire and live out the rest of their lives as family pets. So really excited to welcome Thorvey to Royal Oak. And that wraps up our good news for the week. So I'm going to bring Liz on from my office, and then we will get into questions and answers. So just a reminder, if you do have a question, no matter what platform you're on, feel free to type it in the comments. And if you could just state your name in case that's not obvious based on your username, what city you're from, and then fire away with your question. And we will welcome Liz.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. So I know that questions like to trickle in during this time, but we only have one right now. And that is from Joseph, a constituent from Royal Oak on Facebook. They ask, any updates on the work of the Redistricting Commission?
Yeah, great question. So the Redistricting Commission, just to take a step back and remind everybody what this is all about, Michigan now has an independent redistricting commission. So what that means is for the first time ever in Michigan history, our legislative and congressional districts will be drawn by regular citizens. This was traditionally a job that was done by the legislature, and it resulted in partisan gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the process by which districts are kind of intentionally drawn to make them more favorable to one party or the other. This happens all around the country. Both parties have participated in this practice, and it leads to just really imbalanced government. It's hard to feel like you are accurately represented if you live in a district that was intentionally drawn to be a safe district for either party. So the process has begun. The public hearings are underway. So we will drop the website into the comments if you want to follow along on those public hearings. But what happened was any resident of the state of Michigan could apply to be on this commission. So people from all around the state applied. They were selected. So there is now a bipartisan commission. There are people who have identified an even number of Democrats and Republicans and 5 independents. I believe it's 4, 4, and 5, who will be tasked with drawing these maps. So right now, the commission is traveling around the state to hold a number of public meetings. I think they had one just last night in Lansing, where they're collecting public feedback. They want to hear from the public on what you consider a community that shares your interest. We've heard some ideas I've been following along so far. Some people have proposed districting by school district. Other people have proposed thinking about the rural-urban divide and the interest there and how you kind of intersect that, and making sure that the districts are diverse and accurately representative of the people who live in those communities. One thing that we see in our district is I share a district with 3 congressional offices and 5 state house reps, but kind of the way that my district cuts up a small section of 3 congressional districts. So we'll see how the public decides to draw these districts, but you can follow along. You can submit public comments, and you can actually, if you really want to get into the weeds on it, the commission is accepting proposals of maps drawn by regular people as well. So if you want to take a stab at drawing legislative maps, you can do that, and you can submit them to the commission and explain why you chose the maps that you did. So it's ongoing. I know that the commission requested an extension on when the maps will be due because the census data, putting those words together, the census data was delayed this year. So because of the pandemic, it was much harder to get out and perform a traditional census. So the data will be delayed. A few other states have delayed their maps as well. So I know that the commission has requested an extension. That request is now in front of the Michigan Supreme Court, who will decide whether or not to grant that extension. So we don't know when we're going to see updated maps. But when I run for reelection in 2022, it will be in a new district. So we're not entirely sure what that district will look like yet. And frankly, for the first time, I, as a legislator, will have no say in it. So it will be as much a surprise to me as it is to everybody else. So we've had some people reaching out and asking, are you still going to be up for being my senator in 2022? And unless you live in Royal Oak, I would assume that Royal Oak would be included because that's where I live. But outside of that, I don't know what cities will be included just yet. But like I said, long-winded answer, we will post the website where you can follow along and submit comment while you can, or submit maps. And we encourage people to follow along with that process. It's pretty cool to see, for the first time in history, an entirely new way to draw legislative and congressional maps, and hopefully end gerrymandering. I think that's going to be good for everybody.
Yeah, I did post that in the comments, so apologies if my very loud keyboard was in the way of you answering that at all. Next comment we have is from Melanie on Facebook. She's from Royal Oak. Wants to know if you could talk about the topic of the third grade reading retention.
Yeah, so great question. This was something, to give some context, the third grade reading law, which is a law that was passed that I would have opposed, but it passed before my time in the legislature, requires that if students in third grade do not hit certain reading level requirements, that they be held back in the third grade to repeat the grade. On its face, I don't support this idea for a number of reasons. And again, Senator Polhanke, who I showed in a video previously, spoke out against this bill also this week because mass retention is not shown to work. If you are holding thousands of kids back a grade, not only is it not effective, but there is a real mental health impact on these kids who are held back a grade, who feel like they've done something wrong. So it's, in my opinion, not the right solution to ensure that all of our kids can read. But all of that is to say, Senator Bumstead had introduced a bill to remove the retention requirement from the third grade reading law. So it would still include the test related to the third grade reading law, but would no longer include the retention. That is a bill that passed during the pandemic. But this week in the Senate committee, the Senate Education Committee, the committee itself substituted a version of his bill that would delay the retention by a year. It wouldn't get rid of it. It would delay retention so that they would be retained in fourth grade instead of third grade once they were back to normal during the pandemic. And something pretty unprecedented happened where Senator Bumstead came to the committee and asked that his name be removed from his own bill because he did not approve of the removal of the retention just being delayed a year. In his mind, it totally took out the ideal impact of the bill, which would be to remove that aspect of it. Senator Bumstead is a Republican, and we'll see what happens, but that was a pretty unprecedented move to have the original bill author be so upset about what happened to his bill that he asked for his name to be removed from it. So we'll keep everybody posted. And this is a good plug. If you haven't signed up for our email newsletter, I will put the website up right now. So go to our website. You can sign up for our email newsletter, and we send out updates on bills that have moved, bills that have signed. And it's just a great way to get in tons of detail more information about what's happening in the legislature. But that's the latest on the third grade reading law.
Yes. Sorry, I'm putting our website in the comments as well. Multitasking. Okay. I see that we have maybe one more comment from Linda on Facebook. Wants to know if you have any thoughts on the recent attack ads on Governor Gretchen Whitmer. I haven't seen them. I don't have cable or much to pay attention. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. She wanted to know.
Yeah, Linda, I fall in this camp too. I was a cable cutter a long time ago. So if there are ads running on TV, I haven't seen them yet. So I don't have comments specifically on the ads that you're referring to. But I will say, for everybody, believe it or not, the 2022 election cycle is already ramping up in full swing. So, be prepared for ads and information out there. I will be up for re-election for the first time. But it's just something to be aware of. I think we in Michigan, we're all used to being pummeled with political ads. It's funny when I leave my house and I'm somewhere public that does have cable, it is jarring when you see how many political ads there are that run all the time. And that's a much larger conversation about campaign finance reform and advertising reform and all those sorts of things that I don't think we're going to get into right now. But yeah, it makes it much harder for us to do our jobs in the legislature because we're not just voting on bills on the merits of the bills, but we have to think of everything through the lens of, okay, is this a political play? Is this an attack for 2022? Is this just something that they're putting up to put on our record, which is just a really, really unfortunate way to govern, to legislate. But that is the reality of the way our system operates right now. So Linda, no comment specifically on the ad, but just a good flag for everybody to steel themselves up because campaign season, I feel like it gets longer and longer and longer every year. And I feel like we are still relitigating 2020, unfortunately, and we're already ramping up for 2022.
Yep. Exciting times ahead.
On that happy note.
Yeah. That is all I see in the comments of any questions. So I think that's it. All right. For me, at least.
On that note, I can't believe that it is almost June and it's as cold and gloomy as it is today, but hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks again for tuning in. If you know of anybody who would like these updates, we're trying to make them as fun, as engaging as possible. This is something we do every week that the Senate is in session. We do it live. We have toyed around with replaying these videos on Saturdays, and we want to get them to as many people as possible. So if you have anybody who hasn't seen them, send it to them, ask them to tune in. We think this is a great forum to connect with all of you guys and have you connect with us. And even as we get back to doing in-person events, we will look to live stream them as well, because one of the things we learned during the pandemic is it's really hard for a lot of people to come to a physical in-person event with us if you have kids, if you have a job, if you just don't want to drive and sit in a coffee shop for a couple of hours. Some people really like in-person events, so we want to make sure we're accessible for everybody. But with that, we will let everybody go, and we hope you have a great weekend and a safe Memorial Day. Make sure that we take time to recognize the people that we've lost. That is the purpose of Memorial Day, and just reflect on everything that allows us to have the freedoms that we have in this country that I'm very grateful for. And with that, we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.